Well, g'day, Max here again. Welcome back to the shop. So we're coming up to the closing stages of the series of videos on the maintenance on the lathe, and so this week we're going to focus on the tailstock. So what we're going to do is find out how this quill is travelling in relation to the axis of the lathe, as in whether we're going uphill, downhill, left, right, because of the funky machining done with a sanding disc of the two sliding components at the bottom there. Plus we've got a couple of oilers to go in as well, and we've got to do the provision for the way wipers for the tailstock, as this has never had any, didn't come with them. So we'll get some dial indicators set up. Okay, we've got the coax set up, just held in a collet chuck in the spindle. So we're just checking our tailstock quill with it fully retracted first. So as we come around, I'm only interested in the vertical measurements, and you can see there we're coming up just shy of 5 thou. So that's a 2.5 thou centre height discrepancy. So we're 2.5 thou high. Okay, so what we'll do now, we'll extend the tailstock and we'll see if we get the same reading. Okay, we're at full extension now. Let's see how our gauge is reading now. So as you can see now, we've picked up a couple of tenths and we're reading a full 5 thou, which is still pretty good. So we've not really got any difference at full extension to where we were before. So that's a good indicator that the quill is travelling in some sort of reasonable parallel fashion with the axis. So we'll get the indicator set up on the quill on the outside and just see how it's travelling that way and across its entire length. So I have the indicator mounted on the carriage. We'll just traverse the carriage up and down and just see what sort of measurement we get. Sorry if it's a bit shaky, but it's all handheld. And that's quite acceptable, that's like, there's barely anything in that. So I can only run it up as far as the ejection slot there goes, so we're very happy that way. Okay, we have our quill fully extended and locked into position, tailstock locked. So we have our indicator set up to run along the top of it. So we'll just take a measurement in case there's any rise or fall in the quill. No, she's dead on that. That needle hasn't moved, so just to show the indicator is actually touching. So that's a good thing. So I think the next stage we'll remove the tailstock and strip it down. Okay, well, let's start the disassembly of the tailstock. We'll get the hand wheel off and then we should be able to pull the quill out hopefully. So it appears just to have the same sort of top hat lock nut arrangement as the hand wheels for the crossfeed and the compound slide. So we should be able to just undo this grub screw in the middle here. That. Slacken them off. Oh, the whole lot's coming out. That's a bonus. So yeah, it's just a top hat shaped nut with the locking grub screw in the end there. Let me get a rag. It's a bit greasy in there. Now, yep, so off slips the handle assembly, and it has the friction mechanism for the graduated dial underneath it there. So it's all looking alright there. Now we have this collar and a keyway to pull out. So I'll get the keyway out and get this collar off. Okay, we're going to get some more tools. So the keyway, so it's going to be kind to me. Yep, that plucks out with a pair of pliers. Three cap screws. And our collar comes off. Okay, so that has a thrust bearing just inside there. Now will that allow us to withdraw the screw? Yes, it does. Okay, so there's our tailstock screw, there's the other bearing race, and the thrust face that runs on there. So actually that's all looking really good. So that's a good thing. Now our tailstock quill, it's all full of grease in there, so just wipe the grease out. But we're not sure which direction it comes out. So we'll try from the other side here. It doesn't, there's a keyway underneath, so it's got to come out the rear. Okay, so it doesn't want to come out that way either. So this calls for some further investigation. Okay, we're looking at our bronze nut, so it's possible we have to remove this. Just 3 cap screws retain this nut in position. I don't know if you can hear the wind, it's blowing a gale outside today. Had a bit of crazy weather. High 30s, 40 degrees the other day, and then rain last night. Well, there's some other... Oh, here we are, there's a retainer. We'll swing you around, there's a nut and another retainer up underneath at the front. So that will allow the quill to come out. Okay, what that does, that's an anti-rotation device for the quill. So there's a keyway in the quill, length of the quill. That stops the quill rotating, so if you're drilling a hole, it stops the hole. You know, with the drill bit in the end, it stops the whole show going round in circles on you. So out that pops. Yeah, So there's just a parallel section machined on the end, and that's what runs in this slot. So now this quill should pop out, and it does. As does our bronze nut, which we've already removed the screws out of. Okay. One thing I don't like on this machine is the way they've etched in the graduations on the quill. It would be nice if that was properly engraved a bit deeper. Okay, so what we've got to trace now, or actually while we've got it round this way, we'll just pop the spanner. That's 3/4, that one. We'll just pop this base back off. I've got the wood down on the Bridgeport table today because yesterday I spent a bit of time just stoning off the top of the table there. So we need to undo our locking screws. Slip this base part back off again. Okay, off comes that. Now, what I was interested in here, there's this oiler. There's an oiler on the top there. Now I didn't know if that lubricated the quill and the screw, or just the screw. So well, it just seems to come down on top of, yeah, this comes down on top of the screw. So I mean, I've put a lot of oil in there since I've had this lathe, and it's still got fresh grease in there, like the oil doesn't go anywhere. Okay, so that's a mystery. The quill bore's pretty oily. Well, sort of. Okay, so what we're going to do is clean this all up, and we want to blue these faces up and just see where we're contacting. But if you remember, we've got this roll pin going into a blind hole down to retain this lever. So what I thought, I'd drill it and we'll tap a number 8 UNC thread in it and see if we can't get a screw in there and eject the roll pin. So we'll get this set up in the drill and get our hole done. Well, okay, well, so Hong Fuck Wong here has been demoted from a milling machine to a drill press now that the Bridgeport's up and running-ish. So we'll get our hole done. A little bit of cutting oil. Very carefully. Okay, that should be enough depth to get a thread started in the end of the roll pin, so let's see if we can't get a tap our thread. Okay, we've drilled our tapping size hole for the number 8 UNC tap, and we've got this oversized tap wrench I used to actually have a little miniature one, exactly the same. This is a more and right that I made up years ago when I was a young bloke. It was exact replica, so I'll have to make another one. Should put a bit of, oh, there's enough oil in the hole already still, so I was going to say we should put some tapping compound on it, but we'll just take it steady. Actually feels like that's grabbed the roll pin and is turning the whole roll pin, I think. Be able to put a bit of upward pressure. On it. There we have it. One extracted roll pin. Okay, so I don't know if that'll go back in. We might come up with a, I think we'll put a grub screw in that instead with a step down end on it. So this should allow this handle to come out. Sort of does. Okay, now what have they come up with here to stop this coming out? I bet you this, well, this screws into this. I bet you it screws through further than, yeah, it's hitting on the shoulder. There's a shoulder here. So we'll have to unscrew this part out of this part. What a mission. So let me locate a set of nuts, and we'll put 2 nuts on here, that way we can get a bite on it and unscrew it without damaging the shaft. Okay, so I found a nut. We're just going to lock these nuts together. Hopefully it's got it. So the end of the thread was protruding through into the bore of this clamp mechanism. Which was stopping it coming over its shoulder here on the cam. So your locking mechanism for the tailstock, see, this is on a cam, so all it does when this part's on and this rotates, it lifts this up and holds the clamp plate underneath. Now, we don't really need to disassemble this any further. The tailstock locking mechanism works fine. If I was to take that out, I would have to unscrew this handle off this locking screw here, and then this would unscrew, allowing the locking mechanism to come out. So that doesn't need to come out. This oil seal is fine, that can stay. So all we're going to do now is set and glue up the base and the tailstock, rub them together. We'll just see what sort of a contact we're getting over this area. So we have a new tube of bearing glue. I was just reading on the back of this, it's actually made in Australia, so that's pretty good. We still actually make something over here. They used to make a lot of things in this country back in the day. Nowadays, sadly, it doesn't happen anymore. I'm just trying to get a thin, relatively even coat. We'll see what that does. Okay. Let me mark this with a texter so we can see where we're contacting. It's pretty hard to show up on camera. Okay, so on the tailstock base, all the little circles I've just marked in blue are the only places it's contacting over this entire area. We should have something you expect over here as well. Nothing in the middle here. It's only just those two front spots and the little spots over the back. So that's not real good. Let me scratch my head for 5 minutes and think about my options with this, because I have to consider the accuracy that we're getting on our tailstock quill. I mean, how did they get accuracy like that with something that's been cleaned up with a belt sander at this end here? It's got me. So what I'm faced with, if I try and increase our contact area here. We do have 2.5 thou above centre on our measurements from our tailstock spindle. I don't want to go below 1.5 thou or 1 thou, so I'm only talking 1 thou. And let me think about this for a minute, because the smartest choice with this, I think, is to do nothing, as it may, the high spots we take off here may upset the apple cart with our perfectly true quill. Okay, well, this is the base of our tailstock. We've just been getting some measurements on here with the indicator, so we've got a 0 point set here. Time we come to this corner, we're -3, and it slowly rises up +3, +5, and over the other corner +7 thou. Now, we can only afford to lose 1 thou in height off this. That's all we got to play with. So with our indicator on 0 there, I mean, along here is where we want really good contact, but when we slide the tailstock along, you can see it's dipping, it's hovering around 3 thou. So taking 1 thou off all the high spots isn't really going to gain anything, because we've still got too many low spots over the major percentage of the part. Now, if we're in a situation where it was really low, I would machine this and shim it, something along those lines, but I think I'm going to leave this be, because what will happen, we'll end up chasing our tail, as this is so uneven, and yeah, we'll end up worse than what we began. If we're able to take enough off to level it and there was still enough meat left, we were still way high, it's a different sort of kettle of fish. But as we're only playing with 1 thou, because I still want to leave the tailstock 1.5 thou above centre, I think I'm going to leave this, and we'll just carry on with our other modifications that we're going to do to the tailstock. Okay, well, I'm going to have to break this into a part B, because the tailstock's going to drag on a bit longer, and also in the part B we have some oiling systems to readdress, as our oilers have now turned up in the mail, the same oilers which we fit into the tailstock, as you'll see in part B. So thanks for sticking with us. I'm sorry if this series on the lathe is dragging out too long. It's dragged out a lot longer than what I hoped it would, but I didn't feel there was any point skipping detail and missing, fast forwarding, just skipping big chunks, so that's why I've gone through it in as much detail as I can to keep it simple and that. So as soon as we get it back together, and as soon as I get back to knocking out machine parts again, I'll be happy. So, oh, by the way too, big thanks to all the subscribers and new subscribers, because last Saturday we cracked our 1,000, so we're over that hump. It's all plain sailing, hopefully. So actually I was when I was at 200, or before I was at 200, I thought, oh, if I get to 200, that'll be sweet, So no, really happy. Thanks to you all for sticking with us, and we'll get this lathe back together and crack on with some machining some parts and some tooling. So thanks.